commission had been a representative body of people sent from local
units of government appointed them. And this was one of those situations where the city of Flint had about 8 or 10 reps. A small township might have 3.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this was, you know.
So then it became
one man, one vote, 9 members of the commission rather than 60-some. And I became the board coordinator for them. And my assistant wrote all the rules and regulations and the pay scales and everything else.
This was then a staff position.
Yes.
You still were on the Davison.
Oh yeah, I was on the Davison Council, and sat on the old commission until the new commission, the old county commission, until the new commission was elected. And then of course after that, I was tapped by the speaker to come in for various things, and then finally asked to be the executive secretary for Bill Ryan.
So the speaker, when did Bill Ryan become the speaker? He was a representative from Detroit.
Yep, he became speaker in 1969 after the 1968 election, when we took over again, when Democrats took over the House again.
And so he hired you, contracted with you for a specific project.
Yeah, I was to be chief of staff for it. And at that time, the staff was kind of a misnomer. We had 4 or 5 people in one room.
Yes.
And if reps came in, there was no privacy or anything else, and there wasn't enough staff members. Can you imagine 65 or 70 legislators with 4 or 5 staff members? That's what it was. So when I became executive secretary, Bill Ryan said, "We're going to build a staff. That's your baby. Go build a staff." And I said, "We don't have any room." He says, "We'll get some room." He built overfloors, if you remember the overfloors.
Before the Capitol was restored.
Yep, we built the overfloor. Every staff member had their own little cubicle and phone and typewriter and so forth. And we set up a structure to determine if they were people who could do a good staff job. They had to write papers, they had to come in and answer questions, all kinds of things, and we began to build a staff. And in 4 years, by the time I ran for office again and became a majority floor leader, we had about 25 staff members, good staff members, the best staff in Lansing. I don't care where. That was the best staff. And later on, that became a real plus for me, because that staff was a good staff. They were so good, they even made me look good at times. And that was an accomplishment.
How did you get by with it? I mean, wasn't there political outcry that you're building an empire there of legislators and so on?
There was. The press began to question it some. When we began to tell the press, look, our legislators have to be knowledgeable legislators. How can they do that without staff people, without help, without research? And also, it didn't become a political problem because the Republicans got their share of staff members too. We sort of set it up on a structure of how many reps you have, how many staff members you get. And so the Republicans were pleased to be getting their staff members to help their representatives as well. So over a period of 4 years, we built pretty good staffs. I think ours was by far the better staff. The Republicans, I think, made a mistake of hiring some of their Republican friends, and we set up a structure. I had some organizations that would send to me, "Oh, I want you to hire this person." I say, "Well, let's look at them and let's see if how they pan out." They'd write a paper and it would be terrible. I'd say, "Can't do it."
These would be organizations that were active in the party and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. And we'd turn them down. I said, they'd say, "Well, you got to hire them." I said, "No, we don't, because you expect this staff to produce. You expect this legislature to produce. Can't do it unless we have adequate staff and good staff." And so we got away with it, and we built that staff.
Right. What were the numbers now in terms of the majority in the House?
At that time, I think we had 70.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had, no, 68, I believe it was.
Okay.
I believe it was 68 that we had. And either 66 or 68. Then we built it to 68 and then built it to 70. And because I remember Cawthorn,
Dennis Cawthorn.
Dennis Cawthorn was a minority leader later, and he says, gee, I don't know what's going to happen. And I remember the press said to me, well, you know, you got 70 members now. What do you want? I said, I want the Republicans to meet in their caucus in a telephone booth. I said, well, it was 70-40 at that time.
Right.
And I said, that would make me happy at that point. Anything less than that is not happiness.
Right. All right. So you were then working for the Speaker.
Yep.
And then chose to run again?
Yeah, I chose to run again. Redistricting was coming about again.
All right.
And every 10 years, of course. And so as a result of the 70 census, why the redistricting in 1972, a district in my area looked to be about 51-52% Democratic. And so I decided to run. The Speaker wanted me to run. He said, yeah, he said, I view you as a potential, you know, future Speaker, and you got to get back in. So I decided to run and won fairly easily, as a matter of fact, and then was elected by my caucus, which I thought was nice. Before I was sworn in, the caucus met, and I was elected majority floor leader actually before I was sworn in, because the caucus met in late November, and I wasn't really sworn in until January. And so I was still technically the executive secretary until the first of the year.
Well, so you moved from the staff position to become the floor leader.
Yeah. And that was in 1972 to 1974.
So those 2 years, talk to us a little about Bill Ryan and working with him.
Yeah.
He was a representative from Detroit.
Yep.
Became Speaker. You talked about him a while ago in terms of a person with a background not unlike your own. Although I think he worked in the labor movement.
He was in the labor movement. He was an ex-Marine, and he worked in the labor union, and he actually edited a newspaper for the labor union, as a matter of fact, and did quite well at it, as you might know. Bill Ryan, to me, he was my mentor. He was a father figure. He was the best person I've ever known. He had least self-serving motives than anybody I've ever seen in my life. He had a great effect on me and my outlook about people, about legislation, everything just about. So he was my mentor.
Mm-hmm. Where did he get his values?
He almost became a priest.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. He was in the seminar, and a very religious person, and everything to him was about fairness, about equity. In other words, everybody should have a chance to succeed. Everybody should have an opportunity, even in his community. And he lived in mostly a black community. He would have the kids, and he'd put them on unemployment comp. He'd say, "Okay, I'm going to hire 4 of you. The 2 of you are going to be working this week, and 2 of you aren't going to be working. But I'm going to still give you some money." This is the kind of guy he was.
This is work on his yard. And
yeah,
so on,
he's working for him in his yard and stuff of that nature. And he was like this in everything. I mean, he was the epitome of fairness and honesty, and the best speaker that this state has ever seen, by far. And we've seen a couple of good ones and some not so good, but he's the cream of the crop. There's no doubt about it. And he just got tired out. He just got tired out and wore down. And he wanted to get out of the speakership so that he could do some things on his own, some issues that he wanted to really pound on. And so in 1974, he said to me, "I'm not running. You got to run." So I decided to run for Speaker, and my caucus was gracious enough to elect me in 1974, November, and then starting in 75.